Hey there, We Can't Wrestle podcast listeners. If you haven't noticed, we have switched our server to Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Highly recommended by me and everybody else here at the We Can't Wrestle podcast.
You're listening to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Now it's time for our host, Kate Manson.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 123 of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Nate Maxon here with you, along with my brother Aaron.
Hello.
And we have special guests here today because we are still talking, after 3 episodes, still talking about the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame. And we have with us this week 2 members of the panel, Mr. Nick Hestilow and Mr. Danny Torres of Fandemonium. Welcome to the We Can't Wrestle Podcast, guys.
What's up, guys?
What's up, man? Thanks for having us.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I want to have you guys on for quite some time. Before we start talking about the Hall of Fame, if you guys want to let our listeners know a little bit about Fandemonium, what you guys do, what it's all about, go ahead and talk that up for just a moment.
Man, it's a good page for any wrestling fan to come on and, just check out collections, and, we get to hang out with some wrestlers every once in a while, and stuff like that. It's general collectors and fans. That's what it's all about.
Danny?
He said it the best. We made the page maybe 2 years ago. The members are great. We interact with the wrestlers and us. I mean, there's a lot going on. I love it. I definitely do love it.
I know you guys have
Fandemonium for a reason, because it's
Yes.
Fandemonium in there all the time, man.
All day, all day. We have our lives. Everybody interacts with each other. It's pretty awesome.
And I know that you guys recently had the Godfather on.
Oh yeah.
Yep, he's coming back pretty soon as well.
Awesome. Well, that, like those guys said, if you are not a member on Facebook of Fandemonium, join up today. You will not regret it. I am a member, and I enjoy it. It's a really cool group on Facebook. That, again, is Fandemonium. So get there right now. What are you waiting for? No time like the present. What we are discussing on this week's show, of course, once again, this will be the 3rd and final installment of the We Can't Wrestle Hall of Fame. And for those of you that have been, I know Aaron's going to zone out because he's had to hear me say this like 6 times because we've done like 6 segments. But if you have already listened, some of the listeners are going to be like 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. I will go over the criteria that we had to vote on, what our initial 20-person ballot was, and, of course, the criteria. The criteria to consider to enter the Hall of Fame were 10 plus years as a pro, and exceptions could be made in a situation like Magnum TA, in-ring ability, promo ability, being of significance to the business, whether as a whole or to a certain promotion or territory, and drawing power. And what I had all the panelists do was send me nominations, and based on those nominations, we got to a 20-person ballot. That ballot was as follows: Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, The Undertaker, Roddy Piper, Bobby Heenan, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, Steve Austin, Bruno Sammartino, Randy Savage, Paul Heyman, Vince McMahon, Sting, Andre the Giant, Ricky Dozan, Stu Hart, Gene Okerlund, Terry Funk, and Jerry the King Lawler. So that was your 20-man ballot. And then we got down to the final 8. The top 8 vote getters from the 12-person panel became the inaugural class of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast Hall of Fame. We will talk about them individually with Danny and Nick here, and then also talk to you guys about some of the people that you nominated or voted for that didn't get in, and why they should be in next year, why they should be, why we should get them in the Hall of Fame. And just to let you guys know, a rule that I kind of came up with as we've gone along organically here is guys will remain on the ballot that got nominated this year that didn't get in, but someone's only going to get 5 years. And if they don't get in 5 years, then they're off. They're out.
Yeah, we'll call that the hanging Chad. That was Chad Austin's.
Yeah, that was Chad Austin's idea from ECW.
All right.
That's the hanging Chad rule.
I like that. So the guys that got in, and we will again go over them with Danny and Nick individually: Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Bobby Heenan, Andre the Giant, Randy Savage, Vince McMahon Jr., and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That wound up being the inaugural class of the We Can't Wrestle Hall of Fame. And I guess, guys, we'll start with a pretty obvious Hall of Famer. You can't argue Bret, you got your Hart Foundation shirt on,
yes.
and it made me want to say Bret Hart. We will talk about Bret, though, for sure. But Hulk Hogan in the Hall of Fame, the inaugural class. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it's Hulk Hogan. Like, he's got to be, in my eyes, he's got to be in the first, one of the first inductees. He's got to be for, he carried the company for so long, for forever, and then he had the first major babyface heel turn that I can recall seeing. So for me, that's an obvious choice.
As far as Hulk Hogan, I believe he made wrestling. I mean, he brought it to the mainstream. When I was a little kid, I was born in '84, and Hulk Hogan is all I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it's like I've talked about on some of the other episodes we've done. He was the first guy. I mean, you could go back to Gorgeous George or something back in the 50s, but Hogan was really the first guy of the modern era of wrestling to transcend the business too.
Yes.
And Aaron's heard me tell this story probably in every segment, but the thing that always sticks out to me is I remember reading a story where a guy was in Africa. I think it was in like 88 or 89. And he would show people a picture of Ronald Reagan, and he would show people a picture of Hulk Hogan. They had no idea who Ronald Reagan was, but they damn sure knew who Hulk Hogan was.
Global sensation, man.
Yeah. I mean, and the guy could wrestle too. If you've ever seen any of his stuff from Japan,
Exactly.
people like to dog on him about doing the shtick, but the shtick was what needed to be done. It's what people wanted to see. Go ahead.
I don't want to step on anybody because I've been on a couple of these, but talking about it being a worker, a worker isn't just about being able to do the moves and like, I don't want to say it. Like, it's not all about being able to do the moves. It's about selling.
Mm-hmm.
And Hogan is one of the greatest sellers in professional wrestling. Like, he would get beat down and beat down and beat down, just sell it and sell it and sell it.
Yeah.
And then do that Hulk up deal at the end of it. You know what I mean? Like, Hogan, for 80% of his matches, just got his ass beat. And then it was all about him coming back from it. Like, nobody could sell it. Nobody could sell a beating better than Hulk Hogan.
Maybe Shawn Michaels, but
you're right. Maybe.
I mean,
his was over exaggerated though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, Hogan sold it believably. Like, he's getting his ass beat, and then he finally figures out the time to be able to block that
Exactly.
one last punch, and then he's in it.
Exactly.
Like,
and like Nick alluded to,
he doesn't get enough credit for that.
And like Nick alluded to,
because everybody wants to hate him.
And like Nick alluded to, then when the babyface shine kind of wore off, Hogan did that heel turn and literally gave himself a second career.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The way he transitioned,
Mm-hmm.
Unheard of back then. Like,
yeah,
nobody knew that was coming. And like you said, it gave him a second life that lasted, another 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Still going today,
Yeah.
The red and yellow, but
I was thinking about it the other day when I was watching that, when he turned heel, right? And doing it to Macho Man at the time, it was just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely made it believable.
And how fortunate, I was going to say how fortunate to do that with their history and everything. That Macho could be a part of that. And definitely. All right. Anybody, anything else on the Hulkster? Brother.
Hulkmania, brother.
And
go ahead, Aaron.
I said it on maybe a couple of these. Anybody, like, I was born in 83, and you said you were born in what, 84?
84, yeah.
Nick, when were you born?
83.
83. With me.
After Christmas.
Like, Hulk Hogan is fucking professional wrestling, and anybody that tries to tell you that's in our age group, I wasn't a Hulkamaniac, is a fucking liar. You're a fucking liar. And
Exactly.
they just want to pose and be cooler than everybody else. We were all fucking Hulkamaniacs.
Well, at our age,
everybody loved that motherfucker.
Or you were an Ultimate Warrior guy.
Exactly.
I was always a Hulkamaniac.
Yeah, anybody that says that Hulk Hogan didn't fucking take them away is a liar.
With your little change in voice, like, I love Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Anybody that says they didn't love him is a fucking liar. They just want to be cool.
I can still watch him to this day. I could turn on my network, just watch Royal Rumble 90. I love it. I could watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it like anybody that would be like, I don't like Hulk Hogan. The minute he walks into a room, every single one of us would be like, Jesus Christ, it's Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, my 3-year-old son knows who Hulk Hogan is.
Yeah. How about him cutting his promos? From what I learned recently, that they were doing it live. There was no recording it.
No.
Well, the way he cut it, man, he came with the energy. Remember?
I mean, and there's something to be said for that too. Like Aaron was saying, first of all, it's not only about the wrestling moves. There are lots of great wrestlers that I thought are great wrestlers in the ring, but I mean, let's be honest. As good as he was, Fit Finlay didn't have the charisma to be, the top guy on the card, and that there's something to be said for that charisma too.
And Barry Windham is a better worker than Hulk Hogan, but he's not Hulk fucking Hogan.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
The next guy that we're going to discuss that got in, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Probably the 1B to Hogan's 1A in the 1980s.
Yeah.
They were running neck and neck for a lot of the decade, and then the bottom fell out of the NWA and WCW. That wasn't Flair's fault. That was the people in charge. But Ric Flair, now we talked about Hogan not being the best quote-unquote wrestler. Ric Flair, arguably the greatest wrestler of all time. I know there's a lot of case to be made for a lot of other people, and I'm blabbing here. This is Danny, what do you think? The Nature Boy.
All right. So if you guys want to know the honest truth about how I feel about Ric Flair, like I said, I was born in 84, like all of us. We're around the same age. I was a WWF guy. So when it came to Ric Flair, I didn't really know him until he came aboard in 1990 or 1991, whenever that was. So, now that I'm older, and I could just watch back on Ric Flair, yeah, of course, this guy has a nice resume. He's definitely top 3. If I had a list, it would be Hogan, Macho, Flair, then Bret. But as far as Flair, I mean, I can't really talk about growing up and watching him because I did not do that. But as far as respecting him, as I got older, I was watching Royal Rumble the other day. I don't know which one it was, but there's one thing I like about Ric Flair is when we were talking about the way wrestlers sell. Do you guys remember when he got hit? He would stand up and walk funny and then throw
do the face plant. Yeah.
There's no one that did it better than him, So as far as Flair, I mean, he had everything. He had the entrance. He had the look. He could wrestle. I would have loved to see him start in 84 with Hogan in the WWF, and see where that would have went. But as far as Flair, like I said, I was a WWF guy. I didn't really get to know him. Even when he came aboard, I think he only stayed in the WWF for 2 years or whatever.
Yeah, it was like I think August of 91 until January of 93. Yeah.
Exactly. So there really wasn't much there.
he went out in like the 4th Raw. I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Third Raw. The 3rd episode of Raw, and lost that career match to Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, but he was entertaining. I'm not going to take anything away from Flair. He was definitely one of those guys in the '80s that helped the business.
Mm-hmm. Mick?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat with Danny there. I was a WWF guy, and I didn't really see him a whole lot until he came out. You know, the first time I remember him is in that Royal Rumble where he won the belt. But now, as an adult, I've seen a lot of his stuff, and man, to me, he's the greatest on the mic that there's ever been.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And you know, like he was saying, the way he sells stuff, when he did the little face plant, when he gets slung into the turnbuckles and he fly over the ropes and walk down the side, that was great stuff.
And a star maker too. You know, like Sting in 1988 he had just come out of the UWF into WCW. He'd actually only been there for about less than 6 months, a virtual unknown. And then he got to go out and have a match with Flair on the Clash of the Champions opposite WrestleMania 4. Oh, and man. Flair made him a star. You know, I mean, just wrestling Ric Flair could make someone a star.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Nate, sorry, I don't want to. I'm a huge Ric Flair guy. Sorry, guys, I don't want to like step over anybody.
Yeah, Flair is Aaron's fave.
Yeah.
All right.
But even talking about like Sting, Flair would go out and give the big fuck you to the people that were trying to like hold him down a little bit. Like when Dusty had him, like Dusty tried to have him, and Dusty never made a imitation Dusty Rhodes, but Dusty made an imitation Nature Boy and made Buddy Landell the Nature Boy. And the minute they did that, Flair was like, okay, what do I want to do? George South. I'm going to have a 25-minute clinic with George South. And George South said, Ric Flair went in that locker room, looked at him, and said, hey, George. George was like, what's up, Rick? And he's like, tonight, you're Ricky Steamboat. And he went out there and had the same 25-minute match that he would have had with Ricky Steamboat with George South.
And that match is on the network if you want to check it out.
It's on the network, and it's fucking fantastic.
I have to watch it because it's the first time hearing about it.
Ric Flair is, without a doubt, the greatest living professional wrestler we have right now.
What do you think
he's the best
right now? What do you guys think about what he's doing right now with what's her name, Lacey?
I don't like it, and I'll tell you why I don't like it. All right, I would have been fine with the sugar daddy thing, but, and this is one of the big problems with WWE right now. 6 months ago, they were just showing us Lacey Evans with her baby and her husband, and she's a loving family. You know, it's like they think we don't have an attention span at all. Like, we're just going to tell the story in the moment, and nobody will remember that. Nobody will remember she loves her family. Who cares about her family? I mean, the story in and of itself is fine. It's just like I said, they picked the wrong lady to do it with because they just got done telling that heartwarming story with her 6 months ago.
Yeah. My problem with it isn't they didn't pick the wrong lady, because if Ric Flair's going to pick a lady on the roster, it's going to be fucking
Lacey Evans.
Lacey.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that they keep having Charlotte Flair being like, I don't like my dad. I don't like anything about you. But she still comes out to his music. She still wears his robe. Like, she's basically doing his gimmick. It's like, if you don't like your dad, why are you doing his fucking gimmick?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The next guy, I mean, and I voted for him hands down, without a doubt. Because based on the criteria that I laid out, I don't know that anybody could argue with this man, The Undertaker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about somebody who, I mean, top of the territory. If you're talking about a territory or a wrestling company, the dude was on top of the company for 30 years, you know? I mean, And I'll let you guys elaborate, but I've also mentioned in a couple of these, if you think about WrestleMania in the post, like in the stadium era of WrestleMania, you go WrestleMania 22, I think was the last one that was in an arena. And then since 23, they've always been in a stadium. And in that era, every WrestleMania, to be honest, the top draw for a lot of the years was not the championship, it was the streak. So that guy was such a big star that his match was bigger than the title match a lot of years at WrestleMania, which is crazy to think about. But he was the guy putting the asses in the seats in those stadiums,
Yeah, man, you're right. I didn't even think of that. Absolutely.
You guys' thoughts on the take?
He might just be the best of all time, man. And, we're going to say that about a bunch of these guys on this list.
Right.
You can't argue with his longevity, his popularity, just how good he was for a big man, walking the rope. Just, he's high flying sometimes. The storylines were always great. And when he needed to change, he adapted with the times, It just kept on going. And probably to this day, he could probably still draw a sellout,
Yeah.
He is where he is in his career, but people will still pay to see that.
Yeah. Nick couldn't have said it any better. And as far, I would also add this. When Undertaker came in 91 or 92, whenever it was, 90 or if you look at the crowd, all the kids' faces, they were scared. He was a legit bad guy, a legit scary guy. And he definitely played his role down to a T as far as the look. All the matches that led up to, the big matches, how you were saying on WrestleMania, what he was explaining, the rope, he walked on the rope. Undertaker, he is definitely one of the pioneers of WWF.
And something that I just thought of now, after having this conversation like 6 or 7 times, you look at WrestleMania. Okay, like one of my favorite matches of all time is WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. All right, one of the best. I don't know if anybody can deny it, no matter how, even if they don't like those two guys, how they can deny that it's one of the best matches of all time. The things that guy could do later in his life with the injuries that he had, it's just a testament also to his ability and his talent. He went out there every night and he was in pain like hell. Yeah. But he still went out there and gave you one of the best matches on the card. And that's why when people like the Goldberg Undertaker thing, all right, it was bad, but there's no reason to dog the dude. He gave you 30 really good fucking years. You know what I mean? Like if he goes out and has a stinker one night, who cares? But
that also goes to show his love of the business, going out there that broken down night after night, WrestleMania, WrestleMania, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, and just keep on doing it, man.
Yep.
It says a lot. And to go back on another thing Danny was saying about how he was scary, this is a personal experience of mine. My dad had bought me tickets to go. We went to go see, WWF, and I was scared shitless of the Undertaker. And I told my dad, I was like, I don't know, I want to go. I don't even know because Undertaker was legit scaring me when I was a little kid.
Yep.
So he was definitely a scary guy, man. He played his role great.
And he took a gimmick that was probably, to be honest, if you watch it, that gimmick wasn't meant to last. That gimmick was meant to be built up like Zeus, That gimmick, you could tell that gimmick was made to be built up to fight Hogan, lose, and go away. Yeah. And that guy took it and made it 30 years and had a hell of a career.
Absolutely.
The next
well, real quick, what I was going to say about Taker is also say what you want to say about him, but that company, and when I say that company, I mean like Vince, because he's that company, had enough faith in that character and Mark Calloway as a man to be able to take people that might not necessarily be quote unquote great workers and put them with him and know that you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Like King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 11, at the WrestleMania 11 era of Bundy, which Bundy was a good bumper and all that shit, But Vince McMahon had enough faith in Mark Calloway to go, you know what? It might not be the greatest thing in the world, but Mark's going to get something out of Bundy. And Mark's going to get something out of Giant Gonzalez. And Mark's going to get something out of Jimmy Snuka in WrestleMania 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, these guys might not be that great, but if you put them with Mark, you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
The next guy we got to talk. Oh, the next guy we got to talk about, Bobby the Brain Heenan, funniest motherfucker in the history of the business. Hands down,
manager of all time.
Mm-hmm. And we've actually had discussions on this show at times when you think about it from beginning to end of his career. He may be low key the greatest performer in wrestling history. You know, he checks every single box. You know, but go ahead, guys. Bobby Heenan.
To me, Bobby Heenan was Jerry Lawler before Jerry Lawler. He was definitely when he went to commentating, he was definitely for the heels. He definitely tried to embarrass the good guys. And, I mean, he was pretty entertaining. As far as a manager, you know, he managed the greats. Andre the Giant. He's definitely up there, you know, with Jimmy Hart. To me, it's between him and Jimmy Hart as far as one of the greatest managers ever. But, yeah, you got to give it a Heenan. You know, I miss the guy. He was definitely very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was great on the mic. He managed the best wrestlers. He, you know, everything he did was just great. I don't even know what I can say bad about the man. I don't think there's
Nah, there really isn't. Like, you can't.
Like,
and I mean, his combo with
his combo with 7 hours.
You know, his combo with Gorilla, and even at times him matched up with Vince. You know, he would give Vince the shit. You know, like and like Aaron said, he could talk forever about Heenan because.
I could talk for 7 hours about Bobby Heenan, man. We
don't have that kind of time today, my friend.
I know. I'm just saying I could do that.
But, like, I think, Aaron, I don't know if I mentioned it off air or on one of the recordings we did when we were talking about Heenan. If you watch that Royal Rumble 92 and Flair wins the title.
Oh, yeah. One
of my favorite things Heenan ever did in that Roddy Piper starts to help Ric Flair during the match. And Heenan's like, oh, I take back everything I ever said. That's a kilt, Piper. It's a kilt. You're a great man, Roddy Piper. Piper turns on Flair, starts beating him up, and Bobby Heenan's like, you skirt wearing son. Like, he just, like, you know, in a minute and a half, and it's like a babyface turn and a heel turn, and it's so perfect. It's so good.
That's awesome.
Speaking of Bobby, the next guy that is inducted was a guy that Bobby is very, very intertwined with, especially in our minds and our generation of wrestling fans, Andre the Giant.
That's the age of the world, man. The biggest guy that I can ever even remember. You know, Andre, he was great. He was a huge draw. Traveled the world wrestling, man. I mean, at one point, he was the biggest name in all of wrestling until Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I wish we could have had more of Andre, honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, it sucks that there isn't, because I read the recent biography that came out about him, and you read about all the territories he worked in the 70s and through the late 60s and 70s, and like Nick said, he was the biggest draw in wrestling before Hogan came around. It sucks that there's not a lot of footage of that. You know, we don't. All we get to see is the stuff with Andre from the WWF from like 1970 something on. There's not a lot of footage out there to see of him, you know, in Japan in the 70s and in Montreal and all that. To be able to see his career and when he was super mobile for his size, and I think it would be great to see some of that stuff. But unfortunately, it's lost to time.
Yeah,
it would be awesome. And like the same thing goes with Hulk Hogan. How you were saying. You know, they didn't know who Ronald Reagan is, but they knew who Hulk Hogan was. Same thing with Andre the Giant. Everybody knew who Andre the Giant was.
Yeah.
Aaron, anything on Andre?
I just think the testament of just how much he loved the business and what the guy went through to continue his career. Like he was a good worker, not a good worker. He was a great worker when he was younger and like in the 60s and 70s and everything, but is a testament to the man going through being 7'4" or whatever and sitting in the airplanes and going to Japan but he did it because he loved the guys that he worked with and he loved the profession that he was in. And Andre the Giant sacrificed so much in his life to be able to do that. And like,
definitely,
I don't want to ramble on, but you guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The documentary was great too. The one on HBO. If you haven't seen it.
Yeah, very well done.
Oh no, I know it. What's the name of it?
I think it's just called Andre the Giant. Yeah. It's on HBO Max though.
It might be on the network too. I'm not sure, but it's definitely on HBO.
The next guy, little controversial that has turned out with. Okay, the next guy we're going to talk about is hands down, end of story. At the end of the day, my favorite wrestler of all time. Okay, but I don't think, based on the criteria that I set forth for the Hall of Fame, that he should have made it into the first class. I actually didn't even vote for him, even though he's my favorite. And that's Macho Man Randy Savage. And I know when I say he shouldn't be in the first class of the Hall of Fame, people go, what the fuck? But I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. What I'm saying is based on that criteria that I laid out, there were other guys that I had to fight for to get in first. You know what I mean? Randy was great, but I think he suffered from playing second fiddle to Hulk for a lot of his career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. He did, he was great in the ring. He's one of the best talkers that there is. We're going to say this about a bunch of these guys, but
right.
He did. He had to take a back seat to Hulk a lot, and that could have hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, Macho's my second favorite, man. Mm-hmm. There's nothing bad I could say about the guy.
No.
I'm just thinking about him right now. I don't know if he was legit crazy or if he was just acting very good,
He was great at staying in character, keeping the kayfabe going.
I want to know, did anybody ever mention, was he legit, You
ever hear the Bad News Brown story? Let me tell you the Bad News Brown story real quick. Bad News, in one of his shoot interviews, was talking about he was walking through the locker room one night.
I've heard this.
And Liz was sitting in Randy and Liz's locker room. And Randy wasn't there. And Liz goes, hey, Alan, come on in, sit down, have a chat. She's trying to be friendly, Yeah. Bad News was like, fuck that shit. I'm not coming in there. Like, I'm not even poking that dog with the stick.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, Macho was great, man. From his entrance, he did everything. I'm imagining right now in my head, his matches, the way he would just jump off the top of the ring, out the ring, how he would jump over the top rope. To me, as far as wrestling, with the moves and everything, Hitman is number one and Macho's number two. That's how I look at it.
And I mean, you talked about the promos. I've mentioned this a few times lately on the show, but recently, one of my favorite promos ever is Randy at the Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view after Jake strikes Elizabeth. Just the raw emotion, and the insanity in his eyes and everything. The guy just, he's on the TV and he's talking and you cannot look away.
Yeah. And Can I ask you guys a quick question?
Yeah.
Just a quick poll. Is it you got to pick a combination? Randy Savage and Liz, or Randy Savage and Sherry?
I personally would go. I love Liz, but I would go with Sherry because she can match that energy.
Goddamn right, man.
He was a good.
They're both psychopaths. It's like those two together is fucking genius. Randy Savage and shit and Sherry together it's great.
Sherry did that for a lot of people too.
Yeah, she did.
He should easily be on one of these lists as well.
Yeah. But I always and Savage and Liz were great together too, but I just always enjoyed Randy with Sherry so much better.
Yeah, because they were so much of the same in the heel man mentality, and then you got Macho that's like, you know, he's super crazy, and then you got the perfect angel, Miss Elizabeth, over there with him. So, you know, either way it was good, but I agree with Sherry and him. They were a great combination.
Yeah.
So the next guy that we got to talk about, once again, like Nick's kind of said a few times, you're not going to hear us say anything really negative about a lot of these people just because, you know, it's the first class of the Hall of Fame. Obviously, everybody on here is a great asset to the business. But the next guy, I don't know that you can argue, Vince McMahon Jr. You know, we talked about Hulk Hogan, you know, defining the business, et cetera, et cetera. The greatest wrestling promoter of all of our lifetimes, you know, is definitely Vince McMahon Jr. He changed the business. He took it out of the territories and made it a mainstream industry, and has turned this company into one of the biggest, most profitable companies in the world. And a lot of people can say a lot of things about him as a man, as a businessman, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, he's made a lot of people a lot of money too.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Without Vince, you don't have Hogan to the capacity we had him. You don't have The Undertaker. I mean, you probably don't have HBK. You might not have Bret the Hitman Hart, Macho Man. He made a bunch of these guys that we all look up to and that are on this list. Without him, none of it. I don't think any of it happens.
I agree. Also about Vince, I hate when I see negative feedback on Vince, because you got to understand this guy. He wasn't only a business owner. He commentated. He showed up at the arenas. He lived WWF 24/7.
That's a great point.
You know what I mean? He traveled with them. He called the shots. He made sure everything was right. He gave it more than anyone else did. So Vince deserves to do what he wants.
Like people say like to shit on that he's got his hands in everything. And at the end of the day, it's all for Vince and blah. But you know what? Name me, like kind of what Danny was saying, name me a CEO of a company that is in the trenches with his employees every single week. You know, you can say what you want about Vince wanting to have control, but in reality, he's there. You know, I mean,
what's the Amazon dude's name?
Bezos.
Jeff Bezos or whatever.
Yeah.
Did he ever let anybody fucking hit him in the head with a chair?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like Vince McMahon did it. Did fucking Mark Zuckerberg ever let one of his employees like shove his ass in their face? You know what I mean? It's like, no. Yeah. Vince McMahon has never asked anybody to do anything that he's, for one, not willing to do. And also, something I was going to say about Vince, and I'm not trying to like talk over you guys, is Vince McMahon is the greatest heel in professional wrestling history.
He's definitely up there.
He's the greatest heel in wrestling history. Like you can't name me a better heel than Vince McMahon.
Especially the character, because who doesn't want to kick their boss's ass, you know?
Yeah, like I'm not saying Vince McMahon. I'm saying like Mr. McMahon as a character is the greatest heel ever. He's the best. Terry Funk
told Mick Foley that the most hardcore wrestler ever was Vince McMahon. And Foley said he looked at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he said, because he does it and he doesn't have to. You know, he could easily just sit there with his money and say, you guys go out there and risk your life and limb. But Vince went out there and did it. You know, he went out there and took the bump off the cage, or went out there and got busted open at WrestleMania 19 or what have you. So it's kind of something of what Terry said, you know, who's the most hardcore? It's Vince, because he doesn't have to do it, but he does it anyway.
Look at it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. He rubbed it off on his son too.
Yeah.
Man.
And his daughter gets a bad rap. Steph gets a bad rap, in my opinion.
It's because internet fans are. I don't want to go into internet fans. Anyway,
I hate it.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
The last guy we'll talk about getting inducted here. We started with Hulk Hogan. You sandwiched the whole thing with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, what I just said right there. This is the best heel ever. Do you have a Stone Cold Steve Austin without Vince McMahon?
No.
No.
I mean, you may have a Stone Cold Steve Austin that's like a Dr. D. David Schultz or something, but you don't have a cultural icon, Steve Austin, without the Mr. McMahon character.
He's not interviewing people on the WWE Network right now without a Vince McMahon. And I'm not saying Steve Austin isn't great. I'm just using that as my caveat. On how great.
Danny, your thoughts on Stone Cold?
Without Vince there, that huge rivalry to where everybody really, really started loving Steve for beating his boss's ass, that just wouldn't be there. And, there's nothing bad I could say about this man either, man. From when he was stunning Steve Austin all the way to the very end, even to now, watching him on his podcast and his new show he's got going.
Yeah.
Great. And every facet of the game, can't say nothing bad about him.
Let me ask you guys something. Do you think WWF is around today without Stone Cold?
They were about done.
It's around. It would be around, but it wouldn't be what it is.
It would have never got as big as it's gotten. There's probably no Rock at that point without Stone Cold.
Yeah, because Vince told Brett, I need to downsize to be a Northeastern regional organization again. He was broke, in '97, and it's one of those things where it's a what if, what if Stone Cold never rises up? What if after he gets his neck injured by Owen at SummerSlam, he never gets to wrestle again?
Yeah, man.
Just all those little things, those little puzzle pieces falling into place. And then also kind of, and it's not the same. It's not the same as Hogan, where Hogan was the big baby face, then he turned into the big heel. But Steve almost has two careers too. The Stunning Steve career, where he was one of the better workers in the ring, bell to bell. And then, his injuries piled up and everything. But he took that and said, okay, for this Stone Cold character, I'm going to start to work a style that's different.
Yeah.
That I can work around my injuries. And he became more of a brawler, a badass brawler. Don't get me wrong. The matches were still great, but they were completely different than the matches he had as Stunning Steve.
Yeah.
Definitely adapted at the right time. And you could say he's right there in popularity with Hulk Hogan. Like people 10 years older than all of us are, that is their Hulk Hogan,
Right.
I think he's still probably the biggest merchandise seller ever for WWF. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but
he is.
Yeah, hands down.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was right there. I just didn't want to misquote something.
Well, talk about the King of the Ring. If it wasn't, was it? Trying to think, was it Triple H that got in trouble and then Stone Cold took his place?
Yeah.
It was because of the curtain call. Like Nash and Hall were leaving. They couldn't punish Shawn because he was the champ. So Hunter had to eat shit and love the taste of it for a year. And he was supposed to win it, and Steve got put in there, and it was just happenstance. And it just took off from there. And Steve took it, ran with it, and did better than anybody else could.
He took it to King of the Ring and put down one of the best promos ever laid out, in my opinion.
And it's like, yes, like Steve Austin, like Stone Cold Steve Austin is a character, but it almost isn't a character. It's because Steve got told for so many years, like he's told a story when he was in the USWA and was working for the Jarretts. They gave him his check and he was looking at it, and Jeff Jarrett looked at him because Jeff Jarrett was Jerry Jarrett's son, so he was making good money, obviously, because Jerry was taking care of his kid. Steve said he was looking at his check, and Jeff Jarrett looked at him and goes, "You can stare at it all day, buddy, but it ain't going to get any bigger."
Oh, wow.
That was his introduction into professional wrestling. And then he goes to WCW, and WCW works him forever. And then he gets hurt, and they fire him while he's hurt. And then he gets to the WWF, and they tell him, you can't talk. Nobody's going to do anything with you. And then he gets thrusted into this spot. And then when he got in there, he was just like, fuck all of these people that told me that I can't do anything and I'm never going to be anything in this business, and I'm here now. And he just fucking turned it on and just fucking killed it. And to me, Steve Austin flipping people off and saying fuck you was actually Steve Austin, like Steve Williams the man, saying fuck you, I'm never going to let any people take this away from me again. I'm the best.
I agree. I agree.
Steve Austin's story, when you break it down that way, is fucking fantastic.
Where is he on your list?
On my list of best wrestlers ever?
Yeah.
He's in my top 3.
Top 3, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to burn this out, but he's also the same. We're talking about Andre and Hulk being super recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody knows who Hulk is. Everybody.
Celebrity death match, baby.
Yeah.
So that covers the hall, the class, the first class. I'm going to spend the last maybe 15 minutes here just touching on. I've got who Danny and Nick kind of nominated for the hall, and to talk about a few of the guys that you nominated and gals that didn't get in, and just quickly some reasons you think they should be, or are you going to throw support behind them? And then I have a couple too that I'll bring up that I'm going to keep trying to get in as the years go on. But Nick, one I want to talk to you about that you nominated, and we talked about this in one of the episodes because we were talking about tag teams. And okay, how are we going to do this? Because we're brand new doing this thing. How are we going to work tag teams? So what I said was, okay, you got Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty as the Rockers, but we've nominated Shawn Michaels as the singles. I think Shawn Michaels' career, I call his career a singles career, even though he was in a tag team. So for him, I'd put him in as a singles. But for somebody like, say, the Rock and Roll Express that spent their whole career pretty much as a unit, being associated with each other, we would induct them as a tag team.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because Nick actually nominated the Road Warriors to be in the Hall of Fame.
They should be in there.
Yeah. Right behind.
It's hands down the best tag team of all time. They could work the ring. They could work the mic. Their look was super polarizing. They had it all. Every bit of it, man.
You talk about charisma, too. I mean, just charisma out there, just exploding with charisma. And attraction. We talked about attractions like Andre and Hogan and et cetera, et cetera. Somebody that I'm not paying, I'm going to be happy that I get to watch Tito Santana wrestle Kurt Hennig in a good wrestling match. But I definitely am also there to see that attraction, like someone like the Road Warriors, the ones that are putting the asses in the seats.
It's like if you ask somebody to draw a professional wrestler, they're going to draw Hulk Hogan. And then you say, okay, draw me a wrestling tag team. They're going to draw you.
They're going to draw you somebody with face paint.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. You see, they go to these promotion to promotion just to go in for one match to get the tag belts. I mean, that's how popular these guys were. They could go in there and sell out anything. Just the same as Hogan or Andre.
Right.
Where they go, they're putting asses in the seats. Hands down, best tag team ever, in my opinion.
That's the truth.
Another person that you nominated that would actually, to be honest, be the first woman that I would nominate. I didn't nominate her this year, but if I was going to nominate a woman, and I think I discussed this in one of our other discussions, that I may even try to nominate her to get her in next year, is Sensational Sherry. We talked about her earlier. To my mind, best female in wrestling history.
I'm right there with you on that. Just like the criteria you put down, 10 years on the mic, in the ring, the wrestling look, I mean, she had it all. She was great. And on top of that, the people that she managed and helped, propel them into stardom. I mean, it goes on and on and on. In my opinion, you're right. The greatest female in wrestling history.
And one more that you nominated.
Well, can I say? Can I add one thing about Sherry?
Mm-hmm.
What, in my opinion, makes her great is, and this might sound stupid, I don't know, but when somebody would bump her, you wouldn't think, "Oh man, that guy just beat up a woman."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when she would get bumped, it like when Jake smacked Elizabeth, you were like, Jesus Christ, you son of a bitch, you just hit Elizabeth. But when Sherry got bumped, you were just like, yeah, she probably deserved it. It's like she was like a dude. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, she fit right in with the guys. She had a super strong personality.
That's how fucking tough she was.
Yeah, she was great.
And just one more I wanted to bring up that Nick nominated, and then we'll get to a couple that Danny did and then wrap it up, is one that I think with some of the people that we've had on the panels might at this point, and I don't know why, because I actually agree with Nick on this one, might get a little resistance. Maybe because they're pining for guys from the 80s and the 90s or what have you. But Nick actually nominated Randy Orton. And I thought about putting Randy on my list because if I'm thinking about the entire scope of the history of professional wrestling, this dude has had a 20-year career. He's wrestling now, so people I think still kind of have that mindset like he's a young, he's one of the newer generation or whatever. But literally, Randy Orton is in his career right now where Terry Funk was in 1994 when he was helping upstart ECW. You know what I mean? Like timeline-wise and everything. So when you think about Orton, in this modern time, he's a legend. And I think it's time to start talking about him being a Hall of Famer.
100%, man. He's another one of those polarizing guys that's had a great career from start to now. And in my opinion, he's the best worker in the business right now that's still working. Mm-hmm. He's great. He could be a good heel. He's a great heel. Let's go ahead and say that. And then, he could also flip it, and he was an okay babyface as well. So, and his movesets are great. His mic skills are good. I mean,
I love Randy, except when they have him in a luchador mask with a sunburn. Other than that, I'm good on it with Randy Orton.
Like halftime show.
I'll say this about Randy, and it's the same thing I've said to a couple of my friends that are wrestling fans. It's the same thing I'll say about AJ Styles. Like, I've watched AJ Styles' entire career, and I've watched Randy Orton's entire career, and I've never seen them be bad.
Yeah.
Like, not like a bad guy. I'm just saying, like, I've never seen Randy Orton do anything where he was working. Like, he might have had a stupid storyline or something, but I've never seen Randy Orton have a bad match.
Yeah, me neither.
Randy Orton's fantastic. The only reason I wouldn't put him on my list is because there's
so many people in front of him, and I get that, but I was trying to mix it up a little bit. Yeah, but
I get that.
That's also what I think is going to be so fun about this as the years go on, because you're like now I've started looking at my list already for next year, and I'm like playing chess with it, like I want to get this motherfucker in the Hall of Fame.
see like how Nick was with Randy. Let's you were talking about like people that like Randy's got all this time still to go. It's like I put like guys like Stu Hart and Gorgeous George on my list because people probably might not put him on there,
Mm-hmm.
But eventually Randy should be on there, and Randy's honestly a great pick because that dude does nothing bad at all.
Yeah.
He's at, the last thing I'll say, and then Nate can move on. Randy Orton, to me, and this might be out of left field, is the Jake Roberts of his generation.
That's a good comparison.
I can see that. I mean, and I see that definitely from the promo ability and stuff. Like I said, I don't know. I always fall.
Everything that he does means something.
Yeah.
And Jake did that.
And I guess that's why in my mind, I compare him to Terry Funk too. Like I don't know. I just see Terry Funk in him a lot of the time. A different iteration of Terry Funk. But so Danny, a couple of the guys that you nominated that didn't get in this year that I wanted to bring up just to get your thoughts on that, just like we did there. And this one is another one I can see, especially digging back into his time in Memphis too, is Jimmy Hart.
Oh yeah.
I know you said he was right behind Bobby for you for favorite manager.
Oh yeah.
I could see making a case for Jimmy Hart.
So I had the opportunity to hang out with Jimmy Hart for a few hours. I think it was December, right? So he told me something that stood out to me. So the reason why he was manager for all the wrestlers, right, was they were asking questions. It was one of those online things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, Vince. Oh, but I'll tell you another story about Jimmy. So Vince had all these monster heels, but they couldn't cut promos, and they just needed a manager. And I forgot who he said he was just a manager for at the time, that it was just 24/7. He was their manager, and he was waiting at the gorilla section. And he goes, all these other managers, Slick, everybody, after their match, they would just go to the hotel and just call it a night. And Jimmy was the only one, he was saying, he was the only one that stood around from the beginning to the end. And I don't know if he spoke to, I believe it was Patterson. He said that Patterson was the one that told him, go out with him, just go out with him. And then that's how it made it a factor. That's why we always saw him with different wrestlers. Mm-hmm. And then another story was that he told me, which I found interesting, was I don't remember where they were. It wasn't in the United States, but he was in the dressing room. And at the time, Jimmy Hart was just a regular manager, and, with wrestlers, and how Vince came back to the locker room with the megaphone. And it was a megaphone for one of the securities in the arena at the time. And he looked at Jimmy. He said, "This is your new thing, talking to the megaphone." That's what Jimmy told me. So it was a cool story to hear,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Jimmy definitely, like we were talking about, a different type than Sherry or Bobby. But Jimmy was also that guy. He would get in the ring and take that bump, and
he was annoying. His voice was annoying.
and Jimmy was great too, because he was a chameleon.
Yeah.
Like, whatever wrestler he was managing at the time, that's the wrestler I'm going to look like.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm going to manage Honky Tonk Man now. Okay, I'm going to wear Honky Tonk Man's outfit. And now I'm going to manage the Nasty Boys. And now I'm going to dress like the Nasty Boys. He changed outfits, and he accentuated the people that he was working with. Instead of attempting to somewhat overstage them, he accentuated what his team was.
Yeah. And another reason why, Nate, is I wanted Jimmy Hart in the Hall of Fame was because of Jimmy Hart. I mean, a lot of these wrestlers, I got to be careful how I word it, but he made a lot of their songs. Demolition, he made Demolition's music. I think he made like everybody's, but Hulk Hogan's, it seems like, right?
Yeah, him and Jim Johnston collaborated on a lot of that WWF 80s.
He made Shawn Michaels. He made the Nasty Boys.
Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart's. And it wasn't Jim Johnson. It was the other guy. Jim Johnson was the 90s. What was the other? J.J. Maguire.
Yes. Yeah.
J.J., right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he could have made it with Jim Johnson, but as far as, tell me if I'm incorrect, but all those little Hasbros, we were humming those Jimmy Hart songs. Right?
He's a honky tonk baby. Yeah.
So, without the music, and that's my problem with today's wrestling. I'm sort of a loser the way, my excuses of not liking today's wrestling, but a lot has to do with the character and the lack of music. It all sounds generic. It sounds like video game music. I mean,
yeah, when that shit hits, you know who's coming out.
Yeah, so Jimmy Hart, he definitely made his mark in WWF. I feel that the way Vince McMahon, how he played a huge role, Jimmy Hart was right there with him.
And one more that I will bring up that Danny nominated, and I can see this guy too, because we talked about Hulk Hogan earlier. We talked about Randy Savage and cutting those promos. Who's the guy that helped him lead him through those promos? It was Mean Gene Okerlund.
Oh yeah.
You think about the professional wrestling from 1984 until even into WCW through 98. There's Mean Gene, being that familiar face every single week.
Yeah. I miss the guy. It's just like when I think about it, wrestling was like perfect in the 80s. You had the right, what do you call it? The characters, you had the right gimmicks, you had everything that needed to be. You had the monster heels, you had the monster managers, then you had Mean Gene, and everybody looked forward to those promos. And who to lead it? Mean Gene.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that he had a great impact. It was great. It really was great to have him.
He felt like a family member to me, man. Like, hearing his voice, it's like when we lost him, man, that one was one that hit me really hard, man.
Yeah.
He felt like such a big part of me growing up.
Mm-hmm. I feel that way about Gene, and I feel that way, and I don't know how about how much earlier NWA and stuff you guys have watched.
Bob Caudle. I
feel that way about Bob Caudle too. The guy that used to commentate for Mid-Atlantic and then WCW in the early days. When he introduced, I don't want to get off on a tangent. We're going to sign off, I swear. But when he introduced a wrestling show, he would always say, "Hello, wrestling fans," and then go into his thing. Hello, wrestling. Welcome you to. That's actually the reason I say, "Hey, hello, wrestling fans," when I start this show is an homage to Bob Caudle. Just because, hey, welcome in, like you were saying about Gene being a family member. Welcome in. I'm going to be the voice to lead you through this violence for the next hour.
And Gene was great because he storyline or kayfabe wise, whatever you want to say, it was these wrestlers might be insane and they might want to beat the shit out of everybody else, but when Gene shows up, he's just like, "Hey." And then the wrestler's like, Gene's talking to me right now. I better
the respect.
Yeah. Like nobody just smacking Gene around, you know what I mean? Like
he'd get his lawyers anyway. That's what he always tells me.
I'll get my lawyers. Yeah. Like Gene was like the only guy that could look at these wrestlers and be like, shut that shit down. Talk to me right now.
Yeah. And he came with excitement.
Yeah. And he was great at, even better than Bob Caudle, and I love Bob Caudle, but even better than him, Gene was fantastic at keeping those guys on point.
Mm-hmm. Keeping the interview, okay, we got a minute 30. Let's do this. Yeah. All right. Well, that being said, the third and final third and final episode of the Hall of Fame series of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Nick, Danny, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us this week.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man.
And now that we've done
nice
it once,
you guys.
Yes. Now that we've done it once, maybe we can do it again sometime.
Can't wait.
All right.
Time, man. We're always ready.
Yes. And like we said at the beginning of the show, don't forget it on Facebook. Join Fandemonium. Hook up with that group. It is a great place to be. And thank you, everybody.
I'll join as soon as we log off here.
There you go.
Come on.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Have a great week, everybody.
Have a good night.